You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Vellante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
Hey everybody, this is Ken Vellante with the Something Rather Than Nothing podcast, and I'm very pleased to present Darrin Doyle, writer, teacher, and really love your take in the feel of your type of horror in the Midwest. Really enjoyed The Dark Will End the Dark, and so I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you, and of course recording out here in Oregon, to the great state of Michigan. Welcome, Darrin Doyle. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ken. I really am happy to be here.
Great. It's great to have you. We're going to want to talk about the conceptual questions, but right now, like, I'm in the mood to drop into some of in talking about your short stories, the horror, the macabre, the strange. There's a Midwest feel I get from it. Now, I lived in Wisconsin for 12 years, so there's something. I'm from Rhode Island originally, but there's something I'm picking up that's this Midwest kind of Americana horror. I know I'm onto something with that. But as represented in The Dark Will End the Dark, a collection of your stories, and for the 10th anniversary edition, the second edition of that book, another short story in there. A really great introduction for me to your work. But I wanted to ask you about this book and its meaning to you, and after 10 years, and tell us a bit about The Dark Will End the Dark as a collection.
Well, it's a collection, as you said, of I would call it Midwestern Gothic. I think that's a good description. These stories a lot of them are pretty firmly rooted in the Midwest, but even the ones that aren't, there's a lot of magical realism. There's a lot of atmosphere. It's a lot of Gothic elements. That would be kind of claustrophobic feeling in some of them. Mm-hmm. The idea of kind of liminality, kind of being in sort of transitional moments between states of being. So a lot of these are body part named stories. There's in neck and face and mouth and even penis and like things like that. And they so that's a number of them. And then the other ones even have to do with kind of, I think, grappling with themes of like mortality, death, change. I think that's the thing that they all have in common. And, you know, I think they are creepy, like you said, but I don't know that was always my intent. My intent was just to kind of explore the darker elements of, I don't know, the human condition. I think I've always had kind of some phobias about body stuff and medical stuff. And so a lot of that came through in this collection.
Yeah, I wanted to I wanted to ask you about you know, with this book, and when you said like Midwestern Gothic, like I really like attached to that, and like I want to give you like a little bit of setup in like my head. When you drop into the dark for the Midwest, for me, I'm thinking Wisconsin Death Trip, like some of these dark stories in Wisconsin and the Midwest as a whole, like many regions of the country, but a particular flavor there, you know, the Ed Gein stories, and it just it feels, it's tough to describe that type of horror, but I was like, that's what I was bumping into. Do you like using that term, like Midwestern Gothic, like capture? I mean, sometimes categorically people kind of move away from that, but like that really helped, like for me to kind of picture what I was trying to say.
I do, yeah, because Gothic tropes are, I think, recognizable to a lot of people. And all this is doing is maybe exploiting some of the zeitgeist of being in the Midwest. Like you said, it's sort of, at least in Michigan, there's not a lot of huge cities. There's Detroit, but where I'm not from there, and so there's always kind of, there might be a city, but there's a rural area right next door, and so it's always kind of a combination of it. And I think of like, truck stops and kind of urban decay and things like that. And most of the characters in here, really all of them aren't really wealthy or anything like that. So there's some of that element as well. And I think I like the label because it grounds people and it tells people maybe what they're in for, that they're going to be in for something that's atmospheric, that's, kind of using setting pretty strongly, is not afraid of the grotesque, and the uglier elements of life.
Yeah, this is a bit of your backstory. I mean, we're just talking now, meeting now, but just reading about your background and hearing folks who have interviewed you chat about the different jobs you've done. And I'm fascinated by work in like such a bizarre way. As a labor unionist, as a worker myself forever, I really become fascinated by like the different types of work. So related to one of the basic questions I ask on the show, I ask it, when did you see yourself as an artist? I know with like a lot of different ways, maybe of viewing yourself and talking about things that you've done. When did you see yourself, as a writer, as an artist? Like this is part of my embodiment and identity.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I was hesitant to use that word because I thought it sounded pretentious. And so I think I resisted thinking of myself as an artist. But when I look back, I think I always had an artistic mindset as far as just feeling a little bit off, just a little off from mainstream culture, and always feeling a little bit, not intentionally, but just not in the flow of what most people are into. And so I know that, for example, I used to live in my head all the time with a lot of these jobs that I had, from when I was a paper boy. I would just go on my route and just live in my mind the whole time.
I did that.
Yeah.
I picked up on the paper boy. I know what you mean. Riding around your bike and stuff. And as a young kid, everything's buzzing. Everything's buzzing around up there. Make a few bucks.
Exactly, and it's every single day. And then a lot of the jobs I had, I was custodian, same kind of thing. It'd be working after hours, overnight jobs. So I think a lot of that did lead me to living inside my mind a lot. I also loved music. I played music. So I was always interested in artistic things. I read a lot. But it wasn't until probably later, really after I went back to school to finish my undergrad degree, I think I finally decided I'm going to put all my energy into writing. I had been playing in a band for close to a decade, and so I thought I was going to do that for a living. But I came back to writing. I had always kind of messed around with it, but mostly just to write goofy, stupid stories that entertain myself. I never once even thought about publishing or anything like that. So probably not till I was in my mid-20s did I think, I'm trying to be a writer. I'm specific.
Yeah. Thanks for the answer. Now you play a bunch of instruments, so it's not just it's not like a quick thing. Could you tell us about your experience, that initial experience with music, and where you were even thinking, a career there? So let me just ask you that. Let me just ask you that about that musical piece, and then you move over to writing. What was going on with you as a creator then? And what did you play?
Yeah, thanks. I started with the drums, but we didn't have the money to buy me a whole drum set. So I was just playing the snare, and that got kind of boring after a little bit. So
Yeah.
I kind of abandoned it. I came back to the guitar, or started the guitar when I was 15, basically. And I had a real good friend, and we were collaborators on a lot of things, including like making movies and things like that. He was kind of my creative, symbiotic dude that we just play off each other and entertain each other. And so we, started playing music at the same time, and all the instruments. I just like to tinker. I just piano, drums, guitar, bass, any stringed instrument I'll try to play. But of course, writing and writing fiction is not too far from writing songs. It's just a different mode. And so, yeah, and even a lot of the the musicians I liked, they tell stories. Bob Dylan, Tom Waits, Johnny Cash, a lot of the old country artists do that. And so that it's always kind of been, part of the equation. And then so transitioning into, like, for example, poetry, which I used to do a lot of poetry. I don't anymore, but poetry is obviously kind of musical language, basically. So, and I like to make the fiction that way as well. So I think they're very closely related.
Yeah, I was in anticipating the question. I'm going to ask it a different way. It's a bit off, but like, for me, in I was really hearing you and talking about feeling off step a bit, and those anxieties. Like I vibe with, like, I understand that. And just I was wondering, because I think in music terms, I think of book terms. Like, people around me say that's the biggest music freak you ever heard of if they're around me at certain times and my concentration on it. And other people be like, that dude's reading all the time, or like anytime he
Mhm.
has. And so, as a creator in that realm, I never played in a band or had like that outlet, and I've written, but not as concentrated, or more, the way that you would do it, for example, is, so when I see creators like that, in my head, I'm like, I want to be like the guy yelling, like rock, like metal, like doom metal. Like, that's what I want.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
that would get out certain the yayas and the energy in my head. But also when I think about like embodying those type of things and looking at creating through writing, which seems such a gosh darn, like, super, super, super patient. Not that musicians don't have to be patient, but like different in crafting words and some mind type of thing that you're doing. Is it like, I see the similarities, but like, is
yeah.
how would you like channel in like, how do I talk and express and create? Am I making it too big, or?
No, no, that's a fair question. I don't think they're exactly the same, like you said. Usually music is a little more communal. Yeah, if you're playing with somebody, and I did love doing that. But the writing was a great way for me to be the in charge of my own destiny, so to speak. When you're playing with other people in a band, you're all depending on each other, and it's just more complicated. And so, yeah, you're right that but writing, it is a lot more patience. It's a lot more slow going, to come up with something. But I think I was ready for it at that point when I kind of got the music thing a little out of my system. I was and I could. There is some instant gratification to it, though, because like I would write at night all the time, and that was the quietest time of day. There was no distractions, and so I would write for 2 or 3 hours every night, and then lo and behold, in the next day, I had something to read that I was like, "Ooh, I wrote this," and I kind of, even by the time I get around to reading it, I kind of forgotten exactly what I'd written. So it was always this kind of new discovery that really kept me going and got me excited about it. So those those, it's kind of the same way. You lay down some recordings and then you go to bed and come back to it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's something to build on. So they do work slightly different parts of your creative brain, I think, but ultimately, I get the same kind of satisfaction out of them.
Yes, yeah. Thanks for your indulgence.
Yeah. No, it's a good question.
Yeah, thank you. So speaking of indulgence, if you could indulge me a bit, and
Sure.
then I might have, prior to recording, I might have mentioned the book, The Beast in Aisle 34. I had heard you talk on a couple of podcasts, and outside of reading The Dark Will End the Dark, um, I heard you give an intro to that book. So as part of the indulgence, I was uh as I heard on there, did you talk about the main story or the beginning of the
Mhm.
story, what have you, of the Beast in Aisle 34?
Sure. Yeah, it's basically a werewolf novel, but it's got a little bit of a comedy horror vibe to it, and the premise is that there's a guy named Sandy, and he is in his early 30s, and he's married, and he works at Lowe's, and he's a werewolf, and pretty much the story starts with that he's one night he's transformed, he's sitting on his roof, and you learn that this werewolf Sandy has been a werewolf just for a few months and is trying to be able to be sneaky about his werewolf life and not let his wife catch on. And they've bought a house recently in rural Michigan, and so he thinks that he can each month just satisfy his appetite by eating deer. And of course that doesn't work. There's some Sasquatch hunters out in the woods that he didn't count on, that start putting pressure on him, and he kind of has to keep inventing reasons for his wife to leave town during the full moon. And so story basically takes off from there.
I enjoyed the Sasquatch, not Sasquatch hunters. I'm in Sasquatch territory up here, recording Pacific Northwest, and I gotta
Yeah.
say, I do get to travel a bunch during the state in a lot of wooded areas, and I stop a couple times every every trip and
Yeah.
just a good solid look into the woods. And I'm looking for different things, and on that list,
I would desperately be looking for Sasquatch. Absolutely. Yeah.
you know, it it's something good to be about searching for that particular copy or edition of that book that you had a while ago and you want to find again.
Yeah.
Speaking of books, I also get a copy. I love looking. I go up to Powell's bookstore, great independent bookstore, and with union labor there as well. The Girl Who Ate Kalamazoo, and I was happy to share that, I think, on Instagram, but also let you know about finding that. So it's always a thrill for me. I just adore books, and sometimes finding and searching. And the thing is with Powell's, it's the type of place where you find that sometimes you don't even there and so it was definitely a nice surprise to find the Girl Who Ate Kalamazoo. And since I brought it up, I was wondering if you might just tell us a little bit about that book. It's a beautifully designed book, and I look to I've been grabbing your stuff, and now I got to go through it all.
Well, thanks for grabbing it, and it's so cool that it was at Powell's. Yeah, that story it's funny because the Beast in Aisle 34 is a monster story, and there's definitely monster kind of stories in The Dark Will in the Dark, and in some sense, The Girl Who Ate Kalamazoo. I was never thinking of it that way, but this person I know, uh, um, compared it to like a monster story, like a big monster who eats a city. And because that is literally about a girl who eats a city. So the premise is that the story's being written by the sister of the girl who ate Kalamazoo. And you learn that the girl who ate Kalamazoo, whose name is Audrey, she started out as a child with pica, which is when children eat non-food items, or adults, but often in children, they'll eat crayons or paste or whatever. And so I imagined that, but then took it to absurd lengths where she starts eating desks and, furniture and ultimately buildings and things like that. And so really the other siblings in the family also have eating disorders. The brother has bigorexia, so he's always trying to get bigger. He's never satisfied. And then the sister who narrates the book, whose name is McKenna, has what's called rumination syndrome. And it's kind of gross, but it's like an eating disorder where you swallow food, but then regurgitate it in your mouth, back into your mouth, and kind of keep doing that back and forth. Like they enjoy the sensation of it going down and never really want to let go of that food. And I thought that worked perfectly for a narrator who is kind of ruminating over and over on this relationship and this whole event.
Not your typical tale.
No.
Oh yeah. Thanks so much for telling us about these books. I wanted to get back to a couple other questions, and it's a variation of the one an art question I asked. What's the role of books 2025? Like, you and I, we love books, and a lot of folks around us might, but like, it's 2025, what's the role of books 2025 going on 2026, recording here late 2025?
Oh gosh, if I had that answer, I'd be a millionaire. No, I wish I knew. I could tell you my optimistic answer is that storytelling is such a human tradition that goes back to the first civilizations, and I feel like there is a deep need to tell stories. And obviously now we have many different vehicles for those stories, many of them visual, television and movies and so on. But I hope, and like to believe that there will always be a place for the written word, because it just is an entirely different way of experiencing a story that allows the reader to bring some of their own imaginations into play. And so maybe it'll change form. I mean, back they used to think that the physical books were just done because of the e-readers and things like that, and I don't think that's really come to.
I've heard it times in my half life, what have you. I've heard it a couple times of the demise of something that's been around as long as you can print. Like, no, yeah. So, no, I hope there's like that vitality. That's like, for a lot of people, do you think it's like some of that tactile is the smell? It's the other aspects of like maybe the whole thing. And one of the things I would point out, like even for me digitally, there's a way that they interface comic book panels electronically. There's actually, for me, feels kind of nifty to move through. Again, like for me, I love that print one. It's probably my go-to. But there's an interactivity or some fluid mode. It seems like comics, like in moving that way. So I was pleasantly surprised myself in doing that, having that positive experience through it. So it's like kind of opened my mind just a little bit more, being like, yeah, like materials or tones or colors, you might want to move through it in a different way or interact with it, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be technology doesn't have to be the enemy or the death knell for these story forms. Hopefully, there's a way to kind of bring them together, like you said. But I'm kind of in a bubble. I teach and I teach creative writing, and so the students that I teach um, are readers. But if it's any indication, the program's very popular, and my students also love physical books, and these are people who are way younger than me, and I'm hoping that there's at least enough people to carry the tradition on.
I think print's gonna explode, at least in certain sense, at least in the political situation of like small print zine, where it's not just like a tactile, but it also could be a quick, cheap distribution things of being able to communicate that isn't electronic. So like, it's like nothing is like seems like the absolute annihilation of other, like the whole other thing. It's like so like kind of looking for that weird, that maybe that weird interplay. Um, uh, Darrin, was wondering what you thought to the question, what is art?
What is art?
Yeah.
Gosh, I think of art as artifice, like short for artifice. It is a version of reality that is kind of better than reality in its ability to express the human experience. It's like a distilled way that is always filtered through the artist's eye. So you're getting the individual's experience, which is something that is not replicable. I tell my students that all the time. I'm like, there's not new stories to tell. There's probably every concept you have for a story has been around in some form or another, but there's always your version of it. And like nobody has ever been, Joe Schmo, born in Saginaw, Michigan on this particular date and had surrounded by these particular people with these particular experiences. So whatever you have seen and done and thought and felt is going to let it come, you got to let it come through, be your own voice. And so that's to me what art is a true like immersion into another person's soul, kind of, and that they have made it like packaged it in a way that's able to communicate to anybody. That's a hope anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's a powerful description. Thank you. Yeah, like I feel the vitality in that. Well, let me hit you up with the big one, the name of the show, because you get a crack at it. Why is there something rather than nothing? We're talking with Darrin Doyle, author from Michigan. Why is there something rather than nothing?
Gosh, I think you'll have to read my book to find the answer to that. No.
Redirect them.
Yeah, that's right. It's a scary question, and it gets to the whole idea of faith. To me, when I hear that question, it's like, can you attribute the something to something? Do we attribute the nothing to something or to nothing? I'm getting lost in the words. I love that question, but I also hate it because I think it kind of terrifies me, and I think I don't have an answer. But luckily, as a fiction writer, like Flannery O'Connor said, we embrace mystery, we embrace the not knowing, and I'm happy to not know why there's something rather than nothing.
I
It's
like that.
but it's true.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, like if you take in my mind, one of the things I've liked about like in the Buddhist tradition in response to this, there's like unknowable questions, and they're like, they kind of like, don't waste your time, like, what's the first thing or anything like that. And so it's like, there's strong traditions of being like, well, be contemplative, yes.
There you go. Exactly. That's right.
Contemplative in a more productive spiritual way, but that's a whole argument. In and of itself right there. Darrin, just wondering, we'll have the opportunity here. What you got anything in the works? What you're thinking about? Anything to know about with your writing?
Oh yeah, I have another novella coming out. Sorry, my phone camera came on. Okay. Yes, I have a novella coming out in summer 2027, so it's a little ways off, but it's called The Boy Behind the World, and it's another sort of horror or horror adjacent story of this woman who lives in. It basically starts with a crime scene, and there's a murdered, desiccated corpse in the basement of a house, and some occult stuff around it, and the manuscript itself is the story written by the woman who is presumably dead in the basement. And yeah, it's got some California stuff in it. It takes place, a lot of it's set in, being written in 2015, but a lot of the action takes place in the 70s.
Oh, dig it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for letting us know about it. It's been really super chatting with you. I wanted to ask you too, places for people, to find your books, things you write or wish to present, in a more public fashion.
Yeah, thanks. Pretty much, I'm lucky. All my books are still in print, and so they're all available pretty much at any bookseller. So I always recommend bookshop.org, which is a good place. You can also go to the websites of like Tortoise Books, which who published The Beast in Aisle 34 and The Dark Will in the Dark, and another story collection of mine called Scoundrels Among Us. And so tortoisebooks.com is a good place. And Regal House Publishing did my recent novella as well. So their website is a good place. So also you can just ask at your local bookstore and they'll order it for you.
Fantastic. Really great chatting with you, Darrin. It's a particular thrill in recording, in October and talking about some of these stories. And I just really like the vibe that comes through in the words that you write, and like the fantastical that you throw in there and present, that I always like. It's not easy to do, but I love it, and that's the piece that really drew me. So I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast and kicking around, books and philosophy and art.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a really, really enjoyable conversation.
Appreciate it, Darrin. You take care.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks.
This is Something Rather Than Nothing.